It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. Mike, welcome to 2017.
I'm going to tell you, we've got a bright future in front of us, although I've noticed a few people don't entirely agree. Listen, we've got a whole bunch trying to get 10 pounds in one of those 5-pound bags, but I want to, first off, Ludwig von Wiedenhoeft and Miles Bauer, my co-hosts, and Brian Thomas, keeping us on path. Somebody's phone's ringing. Not sure who that was. Was that us? Okay. Listen, where I want to start with this dialogue is that here in Michigan, we've got the gubernatorial race for 2018, and it feels like jeepers. I'm so politically tired. But here goes the race is beginning again. We've got, what is her name? Gretchen Whitmer has announced her candidacy yesterday. She's been a long time, she was a state representative, term limited. She was a state senator that I think was appointed for somebody's short term. And then she became, before that tour was over, she became the Democratic leader. So I think a minority leader. I think I'm saying this correctly. And then she took over for a partial term of a prosecutor in Ingham County. But at any rate, she's announced her candidacy for this coming gubernatorial race. But listen, the reason I want to get into it so early is I'm also hearing names like Dave Agema. Dave Agema has been a guest on the show a number of times. He's a Republican. He's a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, jet fighter pilot, retired senior commercial pilot, very conservative. We've had him on a number of times over the course of the show's history on different issues where the media's attacked him. He's been just absolutely taken to school. And I got to tell you, in a normal environment, in a typical environment, I wouldn't be able to see that Dave's candidacy would have legs. And I consider him a personal friend, by the way. We don't agree on everything. What I have absolute respect for is his principles. This is what he's saying. You don't have to agree with it, but he's not waffling. He's not making excuses. This is who he is. And I find that very refreshing, even though I don't necessarily agree with all of it. I'm probably on board with him at 90%. I don't agree with very many people that often, but the differences are pretty strong. That said, normally we would be looking at this, okay, the Republicans have held it for a while, and those types of executive offices, same as the presidency, seem to tend to go back and forth. But what makes this a really fascinating question when we're looking at this gubernatorial race, by the way, we're hearing names like Attorney General Bill Schuette, possibly Lieutenant Governor Brian Kelly, and some other names floating around. But I got to tell you, aside from the Trump victory demonstrating a flipping of the apple cart politically from all of those things that we would normally write down in stone, aside from that, Michigan's got some special circumstances. And lest nobody forget this as you pass your gas pumps, we had an 81% no vote on the gas tax and the license plate tax, etc. There's going to be a political price to pay for that decision. I don't think that the Michigan electorate is going to say, we don't like your big government, so we're going to vote for a Democrat and get more government. But I do think it's highly possible they'll look to a guy like Dave Agema, who they might not normally look to, and say, there's a man that's very principled. He says what he means. He's no nonsense. He's a little bit rough around the edges when he talks because he ain't very politically correct. And all of a sudden I'm hearing myself telling a story like we just heard. And it makes me wonder, wow. I look at her. She's what we would call a career politician. I'm not talking left or right, Republican, Democrat. When I look at her, state rep, state senate, Ingham County, doesn't look like she can get herself away from the political bar. And he's not. The rest of the folks that I rattled off have been. And I like them, by the way. Brian Kelly, I know him fairly well. Bill Schuette, I know him. I like these folks, but they would probably be called insiders. One thing is for certain, nobody anywhere is going to call Dave Agema an insider. If he's listening, he's giggling. Okay, he ain't an insider. And Miles, you don't know all these players, but just based on the concept that we had a ballot vote rather, and 81%, the entire voting populace, 81% said no gas guzzler increases, and then the legislature came back in the following session and put it in anyways. Would you think that Michigan might be looking for an outsider?
Yeah, I would imagine that. That's got all the makings.
Yeah, so when I look at the landscape, now Bill Schuette, in his defense, wasn't involved in that, and I don't know how this Gretchen Whitmer would have voted. I don't know what she voted.
We know what she would have voted for.
Well, yeah,
but a tax increase. She would have voted yes.
Well, she likes government, and that's really the divide we're talking about. That we're always talking about and have been talking about since America's founding. Is government the answer, or are people the answer?
I think there's one point that would be a tipping point in Dave's favor or unfavor.
Go ahead.
And that's Trump in his first year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If Trump goes off the rails, people will never do this again, where they go buck the system and go against the grain. If he does everything like it looks like he's already about to do and he's done for the last 30 days, it really tips in Dave's favor of, okay, we need somebody like that who's no holds bar, says it like it is, and when they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. That's who they're going to go with, and that can be in Dave's favor. If Trump goes the other way, it's not in his favor.
Well, I mean, the only thing we can gauge, and it goes to your 30-day point, the only thing we can gauge right now about Donald Trump is what his history has been, but then more pertinently, what he's done with setting up his administration. And speaking of that, I don't. How much time do we have in this segment, Brian?
We have another 3.5.
Yeah, because
3 minutes.
When we're talking about all of these things in the mix, Dave Agin made a lot of comments, or a handful of. Actually, he didn't make any comments. He posted something on his Facebook and just got taken out in the parking lot and burned at the stake over it. What he had actually posted was a medical review of the gay community that said they have a higher propensity for suicide and some other things. I don't know what his position are on those particulars, but he did share the Facebook. He shared a link on his Facebook page. Just got excoriated for it. I tell you that because some of the differences between Trump and between Dave Agin is that there was a lot of questions within the conservative community of, is Trump really a conservative? I don't know that America's looking for a genuine conservative, to be candid with you. I think Miles has been right all along. We're watching some changing dynamics in the party structures. That said, when you look at Dave Agin, nobody says, I wonder if he's a conservative, because you know he is. Across the board on everything. He's making decisions at Mach 2 at 5,000 feet and pretty successful with them. But he's a very, very different candidate. On the other hand, the similarities are, and we'll get into it in the next session because he's telling me I don't have enough time. Folks, I wish you could see all the fingers he's throwing at me. No, you better not. I think the last one was a Richard Nixon, I'm not a crook thing. Is that what you did?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm telling the truth, though.
Yeah. So we've got all these folks, the NAACP, piled up in Jeff Sessions' office. And the only message that I could get out of it is by the way, I'm drawing the comparison between the hype that Sessions is getting that Trump got with what Dave Agin might if he gets in, and that's why I'm trying to draw a string through this. But their complaint with Sessions is that they feel that it goes to voter suppression. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe you can help me in the next segment, Miles. I'm not sure how they blame him or think that he might be a suppressor of votes, especially since in most of the communities that would be affected they had a higher percentage of turnout than they have voters. So I don't always get that. But those lightning rod comments are not politically correct. And Trump and Sessions and Agin on different topics, but have all made those types of comments, and I consider them truisms. But of course, people's hair catch on fire because they're not warm and fuzzy kind of statements. I don't know what we'd do if we didn't have you, Brian Thomas.
Are you really ready for this governor talk to start? We just got out of the president race.
Yeah, but it's going to start. It doesn't matter whether you're ready. It just doesn't.
Nobody's ready.
I'm not ready. Listen, Brian Thomas says we're ready. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we'll jump right back in the middle of it.
You're listening to The Mike Hewitt Show.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com because you deserve it. This is the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by renegaderiver.com. Segment 2 has already begun.
We're in it, but listen, first off, if you're just dialing in, we've got Ludwig von Wiedendorsky. That's the last time I'm going to say that for a long time. And Miles Bauer, my co-host and a fellow that we're going to say it. I wish you could see his face, folks. I'll save it for the end. It'll be fun. Give you something to look forward to. Listen, the thing I want to mop up from the last segment, though, is, Miles, have you been watching what's going on with the sit-in in Sessions' office?
No.
No, they're the NAACP, the local NAACP down in his home state, did an old-fashioned 60s-styled sit-in yesterday, and the number one complaint, or the only one that I actually could hear that made sense to me that they were trying to achieve, was they felt that he might have a negative impact or cause voter suppression. Have you two or anybody heard anything that would lead to think that he would do that?
No, I didn't know this was going on.
Well, how about you, Miles? You followed Sessions for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say some of this probably goes back to the 80s when Reagan attempted to appoint him as a judge. Right. And I believe the Democrats went in there and blew it out of the water on, it's stories stemming back from his time when he was in Alabama in the 60s and the whole civil rights thing, and how, depending on how you read a story and how you interpret it and what your political persuasion is, you might think that there were things that were dicey that went on back there. Let's just say that there are enough questions to where someone could certainly demagogue the issue and attempt to paint, right, wrong, or indifferent, could have attempted to paint him out to be a potential racist. Nothing's really ever been proven unless you're a partisan.
Yeah, I think that, but I think people often see what they want to see, and I'm not exonerating him because I don't know the particulars, but I think folks see what they want to see on all sides, by the way. We've talked about that on the show before, where people follow the media that tells them not the news, but rather reinforces what their beliefs are. And I don't think that type of dialogue is any further removed from that topic. Listen, let's segue a little bit. Two things. The Ford Motor Company is reinvesting in the great state of Michigan rather than Mexico. And like you mentioned, the partisans on both sides, the Republican side are embracing Trump as a success with this, and the Democrats are going, no, he's not, he's terrible, and this, that, and the other thing. What's your take on that? And by the way, the second part of this conversation is, what about his tweeting?
So, you know what? I mean, I would say this, and I remember a couple of weeks ago we actually talked about this around the whole carrier idea. I'll reiterate what I said back then about, until he gets his policies through, it's okay for him to temporarily kind of sit here and do this whole threatening thing.
Right.
But he's on a slippery slope in that it can become crony capitalism, and that's where he's got to let this go once he gets his policies in and his deregulation and his new taxing structure. Then he can't go around cutting deals with specific companies. Otherwise, every company is going to line up to Washington and say, I'm leaving, because they're going to turn Trump into Santa Claus.
Listen, I absolutely agree with that, and have for very, very many years attacked that type of ideology or that type of politics. And in fact, I'm probably a little bit more radical on that, surprise to nobody, but things like these industrial parks, where they'll, especially the Democrats, but in truth both parties, We'll spotlight an industry or a geographic area and say we're going to give this some tax revenue relief so that we can grow the industrial or we can grow the retail. And I always pause and think, slap those folks right on the top of the forehead really hard, because if they are admitting that that type of government policy works in a small regional area, why don't they do it for everybody? Every time that we've seen the taxes reduced and folks have relief, the actual revenue stream to the governments involved has went up, not down. Not once in a while, not some of the time. Every single time, including when JFK did it, every single time it's been done, that's been the result. But for one reason or another, progressives of any party can't seem to get their head around the math, even though they admit that the logic works. When they come up with their Mickey Mouse industrial parks, that rarely work, by the way. Well, there's the irony to that. Those actually never, well, not never, but in many times they locate them in such an area that they don't work. So they're trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear with somebody else's dough, and it doesn't happen. But to your word, crony capitalism, I think that's in large part how both parties in America in total, at least from a leadership point, got us to where we're at. And so when I watch those things, man, I get it. And I'm really thrilled to see Ford Motor Company make an investment here rather than there. But I always reflect back to the cash for clunkers thing. I was right in the middle of the retail automotive industry, and what a train wreck that was. Government just can't successfully get out of its own way, much less fix another industry.
Well, here's the funny thing about yesterday at Ford. In 2007, Ford was nearly bankrupt. And what people don't know about Ford Motor Company is they actually have on hand in reserves 2 years of operating capital in cash available. And they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Alan Mulally came in. He was a former CEO of the International Boeing division. Boeing overpassed him. Ford brought him in. He took the stock from about less than $2 to over $15 in this period there per share. In 2008, 2009, GM didn't do anything but continue their bad ways with $96 average wage and went bankrupt. Oh, wait, no, they didn't. They got bailed out by the government. Ford has operated like an actual business and corporation should. GM hasn't. So what do you see yesterday? You see Ford go, okay, Trump, we see what you're going to do. We're going to take our investment, put it back in America to avoid this stuff and not worry about a bailout or tax cut. And GM comes out and says, forget you, Trump. We don't build those cars there. We build them here, and we're going to fight you on this. All I see is the same way these two companies operated. Ford ran like it should and survived its own stuff. It did not get a bailout when Chrysler and GM did. GM said, well, forget you. We're going to do it our way. Still, we didn't do what you're saying. Quit lying about us. And nobody talks about that story, though.
I do.
Really?
You just did. Listen, it's all valid. Peace, bro. I think that's what he was telling me. Brian Thomas,
Brian.
holding up two fingers. Listen, I think all of these things are all examples of why government has no business being in business. None.
No.
None.
Ford succeeded
zero.
on its own.
It's like all of the, I get off, but the government, even on a state level, finds itself involved in so many areas that it shouldn't be. Concession stands and all kinds of stuff on parks. I'm going, get out of private business. Get out of our way.
We have like
Stop taking our money and get out of our way.
We have a $2 million bike path in our area.
Yeah, but
and
listen,
the bikers are on the road.
Because the bike paths, they're afraid to ride on them. A lot of them are going past people's driveways.
Yeah.
But they got them from all over. And you know what? It's always follow the money. Always follow the money. Because the 1 or 2% of the folks that think a bike path is cool, they're not the ones funding it. And by the way, they're not the ones motivating the vote. So then you go, okay, well, who's motivating the vote? It's money. Money's motivating the vote. Money's always motivating the vote.
Plus, they go to then most people go in and don't know what they're voting on those millages. They're like, vote yes to vote no. That doesn't make sense.
And most of them come up on the May ballot when nobody's voting. Nobody's there. The only people that show up are the people that want the money.
Like February, you'll be driving and you see a vote today sign. You're like, I'm supposed to vote today? What's votes today? Forget, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, but you're the guy that doesn't want to talk about the gubernatorial race.
No, I want to talk about no races for through this whole year.
Mike,
we're going to make that happen for you.
One thing to consider about GM, given that Obama owns half of it, how much of that
That's what I was going to say.
Still there?
Yeah. It's because he has a a major sway on that board. So then
Yeah.
that competition becomes a partisan debate.
Well, Jim came out a few years ago and said they paid it all back. Remember the commercial?
No, but
they didn't.
But wait a minute. But what they did tell you is that Obama waived all of GM's taxes.
Right. Yep. I need it. All right, folks, we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of jumping into an entirely different topic. So we'll be right back.
This is the Mike Hewitt Show.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms, all priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com, family owned right here in Michigan, because you deserve it. You are listening to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. Back at it into segment 3.
So here's what was happening. Offline, folks, we started to find ourselves heading towards a debate, and Miles wisely stopped us, and we dragged Ludwig across the border so that you folks could hear his opinion. What we were discussing is, where should the bully pulpit be? Should it be wherever the president says it is? Can he use Twitter as the bully pulpit, or should he be over there talking to his dear friends at MSNBC? What do you think, Ludwig?
Well, no, I think you got me all wrong on what I'm saying.
I think he must have tested the wind while the commercials were going on.
No. I ain't backtracking. I'm taking you two old guys on. Get on Facebook today, and you'll find at least one person who's, oh, my God, I've had the worst day, and they're airing out all their dirty laundry that they never would have said before.
Yep.
And you'll go, why would you tell people that?
Yep.
There's some things people just don't need to know.
Yep.
Figure out your problem on the inside, and then you can tell us how great things are.
Are you comparing this to Trump's tweets?
Yes.
Give me an example of where he talked about his...
No, I'm not saying he has yet.
Well, then why would you say anything?
Because there's a point.
But there has not been a point yet.
He's no.
So give me an example of what you're talking about, because he's not on there with his back pains and his...
No, but a point to it is there's some things you don't have to put out there on that. And will he go too far?
Give me an example of something he's done. Yes,
he said a lot of things that he probably shouldn't have said.
Give me an example. Here's my view.
Megyn Kelly's bleeding from a whatever.
He didn't say that on Twitter. He said it in a debate.
I'll have to go back to
Am I wrong, Miles?
Yeah, I believe he said it in an interview.
In an interview, but it wasn't on Twitter.
He tweeted something too.
Right.
Well, I think he tweeted a correction that what he was referring to. He got more specific, but. Listen, here's the way I look at it. When he's a candidate, it's very different than when he's a president-elect.
Yes.
And here's the problem. If you have a bully pulpit and everything that you say is filtered through a media, that the very fact that he won the election tells you what most Americans, at least in flyover country, think of our media. Mm-hmm. Think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
That's why he won, is because people have had enough of being lied to by uber leftists with a microphone. That's what they're doing.
I don't disagree with the media part.
So he comes out and he issues a point to NBC or whomever, and by the time they get done twisting it around, it says something entirely different.
Yeah.
Versus knowing that he sits down with his own fingers and taps out a message on Twitter, then you know what the president's saying. You don't have to wonder whether that's went through an editor or through the program director and then shared, and twisted to match someone's ideology to either be something that wasn't meant good for them or trying to make him look like something he's not.
Yesterday he tweets.
Yep.
Congress has better things to do than worry about this ethics thing.
I think he's right.
He is right. That doesn't even need to go to the media. There's no press conference for that.
I don't think he needed a press conference.
Exactly, but your guys' whole point is he's only using this to bypass
the
media.
This is what we started to do on the commercial break. See, here's where I disagree with you. Congress isn't some third-party monolith that sits somewhere.
No, don't say disagree, because it's not that I disagree.
Oh, no, get your finger out of the wind. Now, you don't quit taking the wind tap. Now, here's what I'm telling you. Congress is not some third-party monolith.
Yes.
Those folks have a constituency across America.
Yep.
Okay, and rather than him go sit down in some back office with his legs crossed and say, I wish you would not focus on that, he tells their constituents, I love it. I clap.
I have no problem with that tweet.
Well, then what are you whining about?
If it escalates, at what point does he go into a meeting with Russia?
Okay.
He sits there at Putin and says, hey, knock this stuff off, blah, blah, blah. He comes out and he tweets, he goes, I told Russia knock this off, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And Russia goes, you know what? Forget you. You just called us out in front of everybody when this was a closed-door meeting.
Don't do that. Here's what I'm telling you.
At what point does he...
Let's make the comparison. President Obama says, cut that out. No, serious, cut that out.
I don't think this... He can say, we had a great discussion, and I told him they got to knock it off. But
here's my view of it. I think that the American folks deserve to hear from their president. They don't have to agree with everything that he says, but it doesn't have to be filtered through the mainstream media. And if he wants to send the constituency of Congress a message, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
I loved it that he told the folks on the ground with the vote pen in their hand, this is what your folks are doing on your behalf while we've got a lot of problems. Miles, am I thinking wrong, buddy?
Matt, okay, so Matt, I agree with your point. If he takes it to an extreme, that would be damaging. But I would also point out to you, do you remember a couple of years ago, just before the 2012 election, when Obama leaned over to the Russian ambassador and he said, tell Putin I'll have a lot more flexibility once the election's over?
Oh, yeah. That should have ended his candidacy.
Yeah. Well, but because Obama was such a poor candidate, said, we had Obama the second term. But so I'm just saying you can have extreme, regardless if it's Twitter or even if it's just an open mic.
The message of what's extreme or what's too far is in the eye of the ear of the beholder.
Yeah.
And listen, there's folks right now that doesn't matter what he tweeted.
It's too far.
It's too far.
Well,
Because they don't like
that.
him, and that's all. And folks, fact, there's folks on our side. When I posted the message yesterday on my Facebook page about the Ford decision, I had folks that have been never Trumpers that were still excoriating Trump and making the comparison to cash for clunkers and Obama and all that nightmare. So while so far he hasn't done anything, let's wait for him to do something wrong. Yeah. Now he's been tweeting. I'm always careful when I say that.
Yeah.
He's been tweeting. He's been tweeting now for a couple of years as in the national light, if you will. Across the board, there have been people with varying opinions on whether he should or shouldn't. It's why he won. It's how he was able to bypass all these nimrods with their separate agendas.
I have no problem with that.
Good.
I think you guys got me twisted that I'm like completely against this.
That's what you said.
No.
You're worried about what he might do rather than what he's done. I measure a person by what they've done.
The opportunity to escalate is there. Just what point will he go, this isn't a Twitter
The
moment.
opportunity's always there for anybody.
And there's a difference between open a hot mic and a Twitter.
Have a Twitter
you consciously tweet. You don't consciously talk bad in open mic. Trump wouldn't have said what he did on the bus if he knew the hot mic was going.
Oh, he may
have tweeted it because he consciously wanted to, but I don't know if he would have hot mic'd that. I mean, there's a difference between a hot mic and a tweet. You choose to press send.
Well, but listen, I got to tell you, I don't disagree with that. But what I will tell you is that a lot of folks, myself included, are tired of the politicians that have sat around for 3 hours worried about what they're going to tweet rather than just telling us the unvarnished truth. Just say it.
Yeah, but I remember a guy...
And in addition to the politicians, by the way, we also seriously dislike the media. Remember, some of the biggest cheers at the rallies were CNN sucks.
Yep, and they do.
Once you hit send, there's no going back. And Herm Edwards, who's a former NFL coach and now a mentor for rookies coming to the league, has this conversation with him. Think before you press send. Once you press send, there's no going back. I have no problem that he puts out what he wants. That's what I like about it. There's just my concern is at what point is it too far?
Are you like one of those old worry warts?
No. I just saw it yesterday. Listen, what he did yesterday was great because you called him out in public, so they had to stop.
I think that's wonderful.
But there's people that aren't as like a floppy fish like Paul Ryan is when you're dealing with Putin and the Ayatollah and does he go to those meetings and tell us too much that shouldn't be necessarily tweeted?
You worried about a problem that doesn't exist?
It does exist. These problems do exist. He tweets a lot about anything. He's going to have meetings with them. Therefore, this problem could exist.
Matt, do you remember back when the professor at Harvard had to break into his own house because he had locked himself out of his own house, and somebody had called the police, and before Obama got all the details, he went off on the police?
Oh yeah.
Remember, and then he had to have. Remember the beer summit? He had to have the beer summit with the police officers to make up for it.
Oh yeah.
So you don't need Twitter as a president to screw up.
No,
and I would put forth that incident for Obama. He jumped to conclusions about that the police officers were going after black men, and then all of a sudden he had to have a beer summit to make up for it.
Oh, I think, if you pinpoint the racial divide he's including the last 8 years, it goes back to that moment.
Yeah.
I'm just glad he's not surrendering the bully pulpit to
No,
NBC
and I'm glad, too. I
all.
think he should use Twitter. Just my only point yesterday was
a commercial break says I get to cut you off.
No.
Folks, we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com because you deserve it. The Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And we've arrived to it again. Look out, here it comes. The Enigma Report.
I got to tell you, we've got like a hodgepodge of enigmas, and at some point we'll talk about the enigma that someone's going to let Ludwig teach their children. It just scares me. He's just sitting with a big grin on his face.
And get paid to do it.
Yeah.
Not even volunteering.
No.
Sometimes it feels like it. But
yeah.
with what you get
Can't
paid
you
as
hear
an adjunct.
Matt sitting up in front of the class? Okay. While I'm teaching, nobody hit send on your Twitter account, okay?
I'm not kidding. I had a student who would text all class long.
Yeah.
And she would never respond, so I literally text her a question.
Yeah.
She gave me a weird look and started to answer the question. I go, no. You're going to text us the question back, and I will read it to the class.
The part he's not sharing with everybody is that she was the only one in the class that was still awake, and she was using text to stay awake. Okay.
You weren't supposed to give the whole story. It's how you spin it. My uncle's always told me it's how you spin the story.
It's how, you should have had your bully pulpit go through the MSNBC.
It did. I went right through the ringer, and then I pulled out what was good.
All right. Tell me this, guys. Was the election really hacked?
No.
Miles,
We
what
don't
say
know.
you? We don't know.
We don't know because we're still waiting on evidence. We've been asking for evidence, and apparently, according to my Facebook, if you ask for evidence,
Yep.
I'm apparently anti-American,
Yep.
and suddenly I'm siding with the Russians because I'm simply asking for evidence.
Yep. I don't think that's too much to ask. And in fact, the Russians are asking for evidence. Now, what was the password of Podesto's
Password.
His password was password.
Yeah.
That's a toughie to hack.
Julian Assange said even an elementary student could have hacked his email.
Password. What's the name? Well, let me see. Password.
Yeah, nobody will think it's password.
That's like the number one password is used as the word password.
Yes.
But most of my systems won't allow me to use that, thank goodness.
No, you're supposed to have a letter and a number and a symbol.
One thing that the folks on the left had to feel warm and fuzzy about is the way that group in total handles secrets. You're talking about whether he was going to text or Twitter the wrong thing and reveal something he shouldn't have. But the other side handles national secrets and even their own secrets with fascinating disregard.
We have the evidence. Assange has said multiple times, we did not get this from the Russians.
But most folks think he's a criminal and don't believe him.
Yeah, I was going to say, the left will come back and say, why do you trust Assange over our quote-unquote intelligence agencies?
Iraq.
So
Iraq.
I mean, I get that, but just produce the evidence so that we don't have to take anybody's word for it. We can see it with our own eyes.
Listen, has the FBI joined with the CIA to say that there was hacking? Have they?
Yeah, they both came out and agreed.
Okay, and have they both indicated that affected the election results?
No, I don't think they've actually come out and said that.
The reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to get to the why part. The last person that I had in my mind in the voting booth was Putin.
Yeah.
Or Assange. Those folks were. I was wanting to stop what I've been witnessing since 1978 when I spent the summer in Mountain Home, Arkansas. I was wanting to stop a criminal element from taking over the White House again. That's all I thought about. I didn't think about nothing else.
Yeah.
And everyone knows I was not a big, gigantic Trumpublican. but I wanted to stop a criminal gang of people from taking over our executive branch of power.
I wore my Make America Great Again hat into the booth. Never once did I think, better call my buddy in the check to have the Russian make
He's
sure
the guy
I
that
vote
voted
right.
for you. I remember.
Yeah, he had an electronic pencil, and he was actually on his computer making it right.
So what they're proposing, just to get my head around this, and I hate to chew over this thing because it's been so beat up, but what they're actually saying is that you folks were told the truth and it probably affected the outcome. Is that what they're saying, Miles?
Well, yeah. I mean,
because we were told the truth, that affected the outcome, and that shouldn't have happened. I think
Right.
about that for a minute. I thought, what a triple, toed sow cow. I tried to listen to that logic.
It's not what was in
You've
the
been
emails.
armed with the truth, darn it.
Yeah.
That can't happen in our system. No more truth for you. So that's what they're saying, is that these were hacked, and the public was told the truth, and that affected the outcome. And then there's people worried about that.
Let me play devil's advocate, because
Not,
if
not,
I were
not you, Miles.
no, so okay, I'm all of a sudden a progressive. Hi, how you guys doing?
That's the new improved
How do
Miles.
you guys know that the emails they produced?
Right?
Because of course, as a progressive, I know beyond the shadow of a doubt the Russians hacked the emails. How do you know that the Russians didn't go in there and alter the text of the emails before they released them?
That's what Hillary said, by the way.
There has been an argument.
Yeah.
Because they haven't denied it.
That's how.
They never once said, these are false. We did not write that.
Yeah, Podesta has never come forward and said, none of that's my writing. Go, you can take this stuff, by
Here's
the way.
the real emails.
Here's the fun part. You can take an email that you know is his, some lengthy blob of where everyone agrees it's his, and then put it in a Word doc correction system and compare it to the ones that's alleged to be his. You'll find that the grammatical errors and the word uses are all the exact same because it's him. That's why he's not denying it, because anybody with a Word doc and a 10th grade education can say, yeah, it's you.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir?
Let me ask you something that I know will hit home.
Yeah.
Have you ever been accused?
We have a
I'm gonna try to say
7 second.
this without-
We have a 7 second delay, right?
I'm gonna have to
7.5
try to
second
say this.
7.5 second delay.
All right,
I'm going to
sorry.
have to try to say this without laughing.
All right.
Have you ever been accused of something so egregious that it was so egregious that you didn't even acknowledge it?
No, I haven't. I'm a lot like Trump when it comes to that. When I'm attacked, I attack back. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
To me, the best defense is a strong offense, and I actually liked that part. When I watch these politicians, they'll get banged and slapped upside the head, and they'll go away and try to find some way to spin it. One of the things I liked about Trump throughout is that he didn't do that. You hit me, I'm going to pound you back. So bring it on. And in that regard, Miles, you've known me for a few years now. I don't think that maybe there was, but I wouldn't want to think real hard on it. I can't think of a time where the accusation was over the top and I slumped away. I'm just not. That's not part of my character. I'm the guy that scribbles down poorly edited novels and do radio shows and all that. I'm not a shrinking violet. So I don't think that's me. And by the way, I don't think it's them. You don't get to be a national campaign manager and all of the various titles he's collected up by being a politically correct, yes, but he's certainly not a shrinking violet. If I said you did all of these things, even to Ludwig, he's got his hockey hat on right now. If I listed out, it goes to Miles's point, you'd respond.
Oh, yeah.
If you know they're wrong, if you say, I didn't do any of those, bring it on.
That's usually one of the ways you know somebody's guilty. If you go to your kid and you say, did you do this? And they go, no.
Yep.
And you're like, yeah, you did. They go, no, I didn't. They didn't fight hard enough to deny it.
Yeah.
If you don't deny it, you did it.
Or there's the other extreme. What's the old cliche? Not to draw a blank on it, of course, but you're fighting too hard.
Oh, yeah. No, that's...
You just protested
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah, there you are. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these people literally said, we don't care what's in the emails.
Yeah.
This is just about Russia hacking the emails.
Right. It goes back to my other point, which was the alarming thing that really concerned them and thought that it flipped the election, is that somebody told voters the truth.
There was a Democrat on Fox the other day who's talked about this.
Seth Rich.
Yeah,
I'm going to say it every time this conversation
completely
comes up.
against it. And
Seth Rich found himself off in a bad neighborhood with a bullet in his head. And I'm telling you, Seth Rich. Now, I'm not a big Hassan fan, but Hassan said Seth Rich. Seth Rich was a staffer with the DNC. He'd have had access to all of that. I'm sure he could have thunked up the word password, and he's got a bullet in his head. He's dead. And you go, well, why would a guy with this background end up in that violence? Because their defense was, oh, no, there's a lot of violence in that community. Okay. When I look at his background, his bio, I'm going, well, why would he be in that community with high violence? And it's never added up. The only thing that's added up to me is stop him, put a bullet in his head, and I'm done with him.
The Clinton treatment.
It's the Clinton treatment. That's the Clinton Family Crime Foundation. There's never been any question. I don't know, but in my mind, I believe that. So, am I wrong again, Miles?
Well, I mean, nothing substantiated. It's certainly an interesting theory.
Listen, folks, follow us.
He's in Chicago. So.
Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on this is Facebook / The Mike Hewitt Show, and on the MikeHewittShow.com. I finally upgraded the banner. Someday you'll put last week's show on and this week's show.
Yeah.
And then in closing, I'm down to like less than 30 seconds. Folks, Ludwig is going to be gone for how long? A semester?
Yeah, 15 weeks. But I'll be in between I got 2 spring breaks coming.
Oh, you guys work so hard for so much.
Yeah, as an adjunct, you do.
Oh, yeah, brother.
For so little.
All right, Miles, thank you very much. Ludwig, thank you. We'll talk to you when you call in. And Brian Thomas, thank you. Folks, thank you very much. We'll talk to you next week.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms, all priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com, family owned right here in Michigan, because you deserve it.